Hold on. How is it that one interracial pairing is more stable than even same-race marriages, yet nobody wants to talk about why? Welcome. This conversation might make people uncomfortable, but we are breaking it down honestly, no filters.
Hi, lovies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda Stranad and here is Belinda Morris. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload video, you will be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries and also educate each and every one of us. You guys are the real MVP. So lovelies, let's dive in today's videos and we're just gonna come back to talk about it.
White men don't get no divorce. They're killing women. Keeping my eyes on right on you. Ain't nobody behind me. You're right there.
Why do black women with white male partners have some of the lowest divorce rates? Now, this is actually not my question. This was doing the round on Threads a couple of days ago. I saw it just before I was going to bed and I thought I wanted to talk about it because I've actually talked about this before, oddly enough, like almost a year ago from now. I think the answer is really obvious. I just think there's some discomfort around it. Now, first, the boring part. I did some research. Most of the data that we have is unfortunately just from the US. There isn't that much data about us in the UK. I imagine that this will shift across generations, of course. But according to US Census research, black women married white men and have around a 44% lower divorce rate than white couples. The reverse pairing, a white woman with a black man, is the opposite way. It is nearly double the divorce rate of white couples. Interracial marriages overall, if you lump all of the different pairings together in the US, they tend to have a higher divorce rate, but that specific pairing of black women and white men often comes out consistently as one of the most stable. So ultimately, we're talking trends here, we're not talking rules. You know, this doesn't apply to everyone. If this doesn't make sense for you, then it doesn't make sense, and that's fine. Full disclosure, of course, I'm mixed. My father's white, my mother's black, so a lot of this is part from research and a lot of this is lived experience too. I think the part that doesn't get talked about enough, that of all the four groups involved, white men, white women, black women have to be the most discerning. They're the only one in that group who navigate both misogyny and racism simultaneously. On the other side of that spectrum, white men experience neither of those things. Ultimately, what this means, of course, is that black women have way more warning signs to read and they have to assess more risk and they have to anticipate way more labour when they choose a partner because the margin for error for them is smaller. You compare that with black men, of course. Now, yes, they experience racism deeply, but they also benefit from the patriarchy. Being a man shields them in certain spaces, it gives them power. And power can also dull perception. And when men of any race underestimate that weight, all of that emotional and kind of educational labour often falls on women, black women, particularly when it comes to parenting. That's partly why you hear a kind of specific type of anxiety around mixed children with white mothers. This idea that they don't get taught to understand their sort of blackness. I don't think that this is universally true. I'm not even sure that there's evidence of it, but there's a perception that exists. I guess the assumption is that tend to be primary caregivers within the home, and so where do children learn about all that lived experience? From their mothers, from their black or white mothers. Now it's important to look at the white man within this equation. If you're a white man who sees past stereotypes, the soft social conditioning, the constant mischaracterization of black women, all of the misogyny, and you move from attraction, which is easy, to partnership, you've almost certainly had to interrogate power, your own power, the power of whiteness and all these institutions and authority. And ultimately, I think men who understand power tend to be incredibly secure partners. My mum would say this a lot about my dad. She taught us a lot about blackness, about who we were, but my dad taught us about who he was, about who people like him were. We ultimately learned about the power of whiteness through my father. I recall telling my dad a small sort of story about something that happened to me that was discriminatory, but I told him years later because I didn't think much of it, and he stopped me and said, "Jam, this is racism." Imagine that a white father has to name racism for his brown son. At a young age, mind. And I think all that clarity really matters. Ultimately, a white man who understands power doesn't just show loyalty in a relationship, but also recognizes his own power and shows up in hospitals and in schools and in offices and in systems and with the police and with any kind of authority, and recognizes when something isn't right and his own power and also responsibility to deal with it. Ultimately, it's just really important to remember that partnership is not just romantic, it's also about security.
I always kind of wondered why it was that when it came to interracial relationships, Black women with white men had much higher success rates than white women with white men, but Black men with white women had a failure rate of like 95%. Then I realized, of course, the answer lies in the cultural and sex-based differences. The Black community, due to their environmental development in Africa, is naturally dependent on their environment. White people largely developed in an environmentally hostile tundra. So white people developed a sense of independence, forethought, and planning. Meanwhile, Black people kind of assumed that their environment was just going to give them what they needed when they needed it. So by virtue of that, a white man is able to provide what a Black woman will need when she needs it, which will keep her content, and the marriage will be a success. A Black man is just going to assume that the white woman is going to give him what he wants and what he needs when he needs it, but he's not going to have the forethought to provide what she needs.
So why are the white men with Black women relationships so successful? This is a question that I think a lot of people are thinking about, especially as Black women are potentially navigating into being open to dating outside of their race. But I'm going to give you my personal thoughts, theory on this. Also, if any of you guys follow Anwar, he's a dating coach on here. I love him, and as someone who creates content in the dating space, he preaches to Black women to be dating white men. And while I preach go where you were loved, there are some significant differences that make these relationships more successful. I think the biggest thing in the Black woman with a white man relationship is peace. That, I think, is the biggest thing when it comes to these relationships, is white men who choose to date Black women offer peace. And at the end of the day, women who want to be in healthy relationships or are in healthy relationships, the main things that we are looking for, the main things that they've said that have come from their partners is, I am so at peace. He creates safety for me. He creates a space for me to thrive. I feel like I can be myself. There is no competition. He sees me as a partner and an equal, and not as somebody who is like, you know, trying to beat him or XYZ. So I think that's a big thing. Also, they have the lowest divorce rates, or one of the lowest divorce rates. White men with Black women have some of the lowest divorce rates, and I think that is something to be said as well. Besides the fact that these men are usually emotionally intelligent, they've gone to therapy, they understand how to communicate, they understand how to, you know, build relationships with people. They are going outside of the societal norm instead of doing what they think they're supposed to be doing. And so if they are with a Black woman because they really, really love her, he is following her heart, and he's not just with her just because. Just have to throw in the caveat that this is not all of these relationships. Obviously, you're going to have shitty relationships where you have a white man with a Black woman. Preface it, because in the last video, everybody's like, not all relationships. Obviously, it's not all, but I'm talking in general here. A lot of these men are also very intentional when it comes to their dating. They're very intentional in choosing their partners. They're very intentional if they're dating outside of their race in understanding their partner's culture. They're understanding in all of it. And especially with, like, you know, the world we're living in with racism and all of that becoming a thing, they are making it point so that they can understand and be well equipped, woke if you want to say, in just being able to understand so that they can help their partner then better thrive, like, together. At the end of the day, if you look at these men who are in relationships with their Black women, their Black queens as they call them, these men truly feel like they have won the lottery in love. Like, if you look at my post here with all of the people posting their relationships, all of these men feel like they have won $1 million, and the $1 million was the woman they were with, because they're now a better man because of the woman they have standing beside her. And if you look, you could see it. Like, you can see these relationships are thriving. They're happy. Like, you can feel it. And I think there is that common denominator with men who choose to date outside their race. Again, I'm not talking about men who are fetishizing, I can't say the word, fetishizing Black women. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about men who genuinely love their black women they're with. They love their partner. They are the love of their life. They could not imagine their life without her. These men genuinely feel like they have won the lottery in love. And they think they're stars every day. They would not have it any other way. They'd probably repeat life to like have the same outcome. Like you can just see the way that these men talk about their partner, treat their partner, just so speak highly of her. He will do anything to make sure that she's happy. And I think that is the common denominator when it comes to looking at these relationships. Now, again, I'm not saying you can't find this in a black love relationship. You can absolutely find this in a black love relationship. But not historically speaking, but realizing the truth of what's coming to light now in like present day and seeing that a lot of black men don't actually like women and a lot of black men don't like the women they're with and they don't know how to be a good partner and they don't know how to treat women in relationships. Why would women want to go to that when they could have the other side, living the soft life, living happy and thriving? So just a good conversation. But if anybody has been pondering like why these are so successful, I think those are some really good points. If you guys have other thoughts on why you think these are so successful, drop them in the comments below. If you like all the positive dating content, make sure to give me a follow. Hi, my name is Keisha. I consider myself to be your dating tip bestie. I'm here to inspire women to never give up on love because I'm a lover girl at heart and every woman deserves to be in a happy, thriving relationship.
See, this is what you get when you do a piss poor job at researching. When you go research something, but you don't post everything, right? Because you be trying to win an argument and a debate. You said black women and white men have the lowest divorce rates. But you didn't tell everybody why black women and white men have the lowest divorce rates. That would be because they have the lowest marriage rate. What is it, like 4%? I can't remember offhand, but I think it's like 4%. White men marry black women at 4%. This is why they have the lowest divorce rates. Why do y'all keep trying to promote this like this is a win? Like this is a win. White men marry black women at like 4% the last I checked. What the hell are you talking about? Post the whole article.
But black women and white men have the lowest divorce rates in America. Y'all not marrying Chad and Derek from Harvard. You marrying Anthony that got down with the niggas his entire life. I had to get that off my chest. Because these white marriages, interracial marriages that y'all are claiming are just the best, better than black men, they are not marrying the average black woman. They are marrying the black woman who you guys disown, who taught to proper, who don't know what Juneteenth is, who grew up in predominantly white neighborhoods in schools, who don't get along in black culture, who had white and Hispanic friends, and end up marrying these white people. You marrying Anthony O'Neill from the hood. It's two different types.
I think being a black woman
Yeah.
and being with you as a white man, that really exacerbated my feeling of having to be on all the time because I've only been with black men, really. The men that I grew up with, even if I didn't date them, they were a certain type of guy, like a tough guy.
Yeah.
You know, a hard guy. What'd you say to me, bitch? Kind of guy. Because you're not like that. I felt like I had to adopt those hyper masculine traits. And that put me in a place where I felt like I had to be hard for myself, for my own protection, because you weren't hard to the world. And that wasn't something that computed to me. And I think that being with you made me feel like I had to be even more hard because it's like, you're not going to notice when I walk into a place and I'm getting looks because I'm black, or you might not notice all the microaggressions.
Over time, that's something I'm definitely aware of, and making sure that you feel comfortable in those situations. And if, you know, we need to leave or if we need to get out of a situation because you're feeling uncomfortable, like I'm totally open to that. Just being more aware in that sense. That took some time.
I think being a black woman and being with you as a white man, that really...
Why do black women with white male partners have some of the lowest divorce rates?
As someone that is now married to a white Irishman, I thought I'd give my 2 pence because I have dated across the board myself. I have dated Asian, white, black. I never really cared. And whilst I didn't care, some people in my life have cared. And I've talked on here quite a bit about my experience of what it was like dating black guys, what it was like dating the Asian guy that I was with, and then what it was like dating the white men that I've dated, to the point of then getting married. Like, that's a lot of my page here has been about healing, and I think that's partly it. For the black women that I've seen that have got married to white men, it's the healing. When I have seen partnerships, or they say partnerships, marriages, because not every marriage is a partnership. When I have seen marriages where both parties or one party hasn't done the work to heal, there can never be a partnership. There is competition. So when I dated my Pakistani ex, there was competition because I think a lot of people have said this even, or in the comments, and I've talked about the fact that black women deal with misogyny and racism. Like, it comes hand in hand. White men don't really deal a lot with both of those, and there's kind of like a hierarchy to the levels that you deal with depending on what colour you are. And as someone that also has white sister-in-laws, and again, there's just an array of, like, in my family, most of us, you marry who you want to marry. But I will go back to partnership. I have done a lot of healing, and again, that's what my page has been about. That's why I started this. And in my healing, I nearly got married to a man, white man, that just wasn't deserving, and I wasn't in a place where that was what would have been right. And thank God I decided to descend to men, because by doing that, I realised I would have been absolutely miserable, and that would have ended up in it just being ridiculous. But the one thing I would give my white partners in the past is that mostly there isn't that level of competition. There's kind of just, I'm doing me, unless they've got insecurities. And one thing I love about my husband is that you would never know I'm the breadwinner. You would never know that just the way that we live is just very unconventional, and there are things that he does to pour into my cup and vice versa. We both do for each other, but it is a partnership like I haven't really seen, because my parents absolutely adore each other, are best friends, and I love the relationship they've got and had, but they've also had to heal in their relationships. They didn't do any of the healing before they got together, so we got to see some of that trauma, and some of that was passed on to us. Whereas when I met my husband, he'd already started doing some of that healing himself, so that if there were things that he was going through, it wasn't projected onto me, or if it ever was, it was the tiniest little things. And if we discuss something and it's okay, this has been done once, can't happen again, never happens again. Whereas I've grown up, one of my aunties made sure that I had a car, I had my own bank account, I had my own house, just instilled in me that I needed to do all of these things to be safe, to be secure. And it makes me feel very sad for her when I think about the situation she ended up in. But even when I was getting my marriage lessons, it was very much, men will switch up on you, men are insecure, men are like children, and when you're not giving them attention, they don't like it. I am a COO, I'm a CEO, like I own a business. I do a lot of work that, like I said, means that I'm the breadwinner. And what I don't have from my husband is someone that feels the need to belittle the things that I do. And when I look at some of the other relationships in my life, I can see where things start to break down, because, like I said, a lot of this is about healing, it's about being comfortable in yourself and dealing with the insecurities that you've got. And I just don't think a lot of people do that. Whereas even in the way that my husband deals with the way that I'm treated in society and the things that I go through, I don't feel invalidated. He sees things from his own perspective, but also it is a safety and security that I can't say I've ever felt before, because this is someone that's also willing to stand up for me in different situations, whether it's parents, whether it's society, whether it's community, whether it's just stepping outside of the door. So that's why I think that some of these marriages have higher rates, because for the ones that have done the healing separately and then when they come together, it is an unbreakable partnership. Unless someone decides to act like absolutely mad, it is just a space of friendship and love and just getting to be this version of yourself that you didn't even know existed, that is soft and feminine. And I sit very firmly in my masculine side when I'm in work, but I love the person that I am when I'm with G, because that is someone that is just different and happy, and just exists for the sake of existing. I think that's it. You just get to be loved for the sake of existing and not because you are providing anything specific, and you are each other's champions.
Here's an interesting statistic. White guys view black women differently than black guys. And these statistics don't lie. Interracial divorce rates. This is pretty interesting. A black man and a white woman are 200% more likely to be divorced. An Asian man and a white woman are 59% more likely to be divorced. An Asian woman and a white man are 4% more likely to be divorced. But this is the crown of the study. A white man and a black woman are 44% less likely to get divorced. Pretty interesting, isn't it? My sister.
Alright, let's get straight into it. There's a statistics that has been circulating again, and every time it resurfaces, it sparks the same mix of curiosity, discomfort, and heated debate. The claim is that black women married to white men have significantly lower divorce rates, around 40% lower compared to white couples. Meanwhile, the reverse pairing black men and white women reportedly has much higher divorce rates. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a clean, almost mathematical conclusion. But the moment you start to dig in deeper, it becomes clear that this isn't just about race, attraction, or who chooses who. This is about social dynamics, expectations, power, persuasion, and lived experience. First, let's ground this in reality. These are trends, not rules. They don't predict individual relationships. People love turning statistics into absolute truth, but relationships don't work like equation. You can't reduce human behavior, emotions, or bring in trauma and compatibility into percentages and expect a full explanation. But trends do tell us something. They point to patterns, and patterns usually come from shared experiences. One of the most important points raised in that discussion is that black women operate at a unique intersection. They are navigating both racism and sexism at the same time. That is not a talking point, it's a lived reality. And because of that, many black women develop a heightened sense of awareness when it comes to relationships. Think about it like this. If your margin for error in life is smaller, you become more cautious. You read situations more carefully, you evaluate people more deeply, you are less likely to ignore red flags because the consequences of choosing wrong can hit harder. So when it comes to choosing a partner, that level of dissentiment doesn't just disappear. It becomes part of the decision-making process. Now, contrast that with men, any race of men, really. Men, generally speaking, are often socialized to take fewer emotional precautions in relationship, not because they are incapable, but because society doesn't demand the same level of emotional labor or awareness from them. And that is where things start to get interesting, because relationships don't just survive on attraction, they survive on awareness, communication, and responsibility. The argument that some people are making that this is about environmental evolution, like Africans came from abundance and Europeans from harsh climates, that is where things go off track. That kind of explanation oversimplifies human behavior to the point where it becomes misleading. Human relationships today are shaped far more by modern social structures, cultural expectations, and personal development than by ancient environmental survival patterns. It's not about who evolved to plan better. It's about who is prepared to understand that partner better. Now, let's talk about the role of white men in this conversation, because there is a key part of the discussion. If a white man is in a relationship with a black woman and that relationship is successful long term, it's really because of some automatic compatibility. It usually means that man has had to actively confront things that many people never even think about. Race, privilege, biases, social persuasion. Moving from attraction to partnership in that context requires awareness. It requires asking uncomfortable questions like, how does my partner experience the world differently than I do? What blind spot do I have? How do I show up for her, not just emotionally but socially? And that kind of awareness can translate into stronger partnership behavior overall, not because of race, but because intentional efforts. Now flip the situation when people talk about higher divorce rate because black men and white women, the conversation often gets messier fast. Some blame culture, some blame gender roles, some blame expectations, but a more grounded way to look at it is this. Relationships struggle when there is a gap in understanding and expectation. If one partner assumes things will just work without actively engaging with the other person's needs, while the other partner expects structure, communication, or emotional labor, that mismatch creates friction, and friction over time turns into conflict. Another layer to this is persuasion and social pressure. Interracial relationships don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in a society where people have opinions, stereotypes, and biases. Some couples face external pressure, judgment, or even family resistance. That adds stress. But interestingly, how couples respond to that stress can either strengthen or weaken the relationship. If both partners are aligned, aware, and are supportive, that external pressure can actually make them stronger. But if there is a lack of understanding or unity, it exposes cracks that were already there. And that brings us to something that doesn't get talked about enough. Relationship stability is less about who you are and more about how you show up. It's not just about race, it's not just about gender, it's about emotional intelligence, communication, accountability, willingness to grow. Those are the real predictors of whether a relationship lasts. Now, there is also the parenting angle that was mentioned. The idea that mothers play a central role in shaping a child's identity, especially in mixed race households. There is a perception that black mothers may be more equipped to teach children about black identity than white mothers. Whether that is universally true or not is debatable, but the perception itself influences how people think about these relationships. And perception matters because it shapes expectations. If one partner feels like they are carrying more of the cultural or emotional responsibility in raising children, that can create imbalance. And imbalance over time affects the relationship. So when people look at these statistics and try to boil it down to this group is better than that group, they are missing the bigger picture. This isn't about ranking races or genders. It's about understanding that different groups of people come into relationship with different experiences, pressures, and expectations. And when those differences are acknowledged and managed well, relationships thrive. When they are ignored, relationships struggle. And maybe that is the real takeaway here. The reason some pairing appears more stable in the data isn't because they are inherently better, it's because in many cases they evolve more intentional navigation of difference. When you have to think more, communicate more, and understand more, you sometimes build stronger foundations. Not always, but often enough to show up in the data. At the end of the day, statistics can start the conversation, but they shouldn't end it. Because behind every percentage is a real relationship, and real relationships are way more complex than any chart can explain.
So, lovelies, if you have watched up to this extent, thank you so much for all the love and support. Please leave your own thought in the comment section of what you think, and I will see you, lovelies, when I upload the next one.